Hello, everybody. We're back with our occasional chat on all kinds of literature, some of it great, some of it not so great, some of it so-so, depending on our own opinions. And you, the viewer, have your opinions as well. You're welcome to post comments and tell us what you think. Um, the last couple sessions, we have covered Joseph Conrad. Uh, we covered Lord Jim the first time, and then we covered Heart of Darkness the last time. That was 3 weeks ago. And today, Kevin thought we might conclude our trilogy of Conrad with a book, kind of an obscure book slash novella slash short story called Falk, a Reminiscence. Falk is spelled Falk and then colon, a reminiscence. And Kevin said that he had read this once upon a time and he thought he might want to read it again and see what he thought. So that's what we did. And I will open it up to Kevin at this point and ask him what he thought of it reading it this time around.
I very much enjoyed it. I think it's an excellent short story. It is probably Conrad at his most concise, which I've been arguing for as my cup of tea when it comes to prose. And he really hits the bullseye here, I think. That's my first comment about my second read of this. So I wasn't fooling myself that I remembered liking it the first time. I did, and I liked it even better the second time around.
Okay, and can you give us a brief summary of what it's about?
It's very briefly told, and in contrast to some of my other short summaries, which turn into like half an hour, we're looking at halfway through our podcast. I will promise to keep this short because I can't make it long. Here I go. The uh, the action is in the Malay archipelago, I think, and it's at the time of the story's composition, which is about the turn of the century, around 1900. And the main characters are a Marlowe-like narrator, but he's not Marlowe, although he could be because we don't know his name. He's unnamed. He's an unnamed narrator. But it's very Marlowe-esque, the tale. And I can tell this is going to go longer than I hoped it would, this summary. But it's very Marlowe-esque in the sense that it is a tale told in a tale. So we have the narrator starting the story, and it starts in the Thames, like in Heart of Darkness. We're somewhere up the Thames River. Well, we're not somewhere. There's no specific place name attached to where this meeting of maritime types takes place, but it's at I'm looking at it right here. It's a river hostelry. So basically a pub, an inn, and you have all these people, all more or less connected with the sea. I wrote that down. So seamen, more or less, and they're in this inn, and this Marlowe character starts to tell this tale of Falk, a reminiscence, hence the title. He's thinking back on a story that he would like to entertain these maritime types with. So that's very Heart of Darkness, and it might as well be Marlowe, the name of the fellow who tells the tale, because in fact, the story gets rather grisly toward the end. We will leave that for now. But the story he tells is of himself when he was a young captain, under 30 years old, he says, and he had taken on the captaincy of a ship in maritime Southeast Asia. And next to this ship that he had just become captain of, right next to it was another ship which was owned, captained by, I'm not quite sure, a German fellow named Hermann. And Hermann has his whole brood with him. He's got his wife, he's got his four kids, and he's also got, and this is a key figure in this story, a very pretty niece. In fact, the way she's described throughout the story is she's more than just pretty, she's something of a bombshell. She's really, she's got, she's really built. That's how he describes her. And she makes an impression on people passing just by virtue of the profile she cuts, her full body profile. So she's on this ship. She's the niece of this captain. And the third important person, or the fourth, in this tale is the title character named Falk. And what happens now is that you have this Marlowe-esque narrator going from his ship in the evening onto the ship of Hermann. What is the name of that ship? It's the Diana is the name of the ship. And, having a smoke, having a pipe with him. And sometimes, oftentimes, this Falk fellow would join in the proceedings. But this Falk guy is very taciturn, very, very reticent, not forthcoming at all. In fact, he doesn't say anything. He just sits there. And in their presence is also this pretty niece. And the whole time that the men are there, and basically it's Herman and this Marlowe-esque narrator chatting back and forth, with Falk just sitting there rather glumly and not opening his mouth, and this niece sitting there knitting. Very, very, very odd. Well, who is this Falk guy? He is the sole tugboat pilot on the river. He's the only one. So everyone's beholden to his good graces. And at a certain point, both Hermann and our Marlowe-esque narrator, they want to get out. They want to ship out. But to go down the river, because there are lots of shoals and other shallow spots, they need this Falk guy to tug them out with his steam tugboat. They need him. Well, they order up his services, and they kind of make the arrangement that, okay, it will first be this Marlowe-esque narrator, he the captain of this one ship. That Falk will tow him out first, and then he'll tow out the Hermann ship, the Diana. Well, the next morning, when our narrator is ready to be towed out, he hears the tug, but the tug is towing out the Hermann's ship, the Diana. What the? And he tows it out into the harbor, and it doesn't leave right away, the ship, because the problem is that the river is so shallow and it's so dangerous with all the shoals and whatnot that they have to load some of their cargo out in the harbor. So because the draft wouldn't, it'd be too deep, right? It would sink too much for them to make it out to sea. So it's like a two-step process at this port in terms of loading the cargo. So he hauls it out, Falk. He hauls out Herman's boat, and then he just leaves our Marlowe-esque narrator looking at him, saying, what's going on? So because he doesn't tow him out to the harbor. Well, what's going on, to make a long story short, is that the whole time this Falk fellow has been, in his mind at least, courting this niece just showing up and not saying anything. That's his way of courting her, I guess. And he felt that the Marlowe-esque narrator, I'll just call him our narrator from now on, not always say Marlowe-esque. And he feels that our narrator is his rival for the hand of this young lovely. Well, our narrator has no intentions in that regard. None whatsoever. He's a young captain. This is his first captaincy. He wants to get out. He wants to prove himself. He wants to see the world. He doesn't want to settle down with some pretty young thing. But Falk apparently does, and he sees him as his rival. Well, after many, many pages, this gets straightened out between our narrator and Falk, and they decide that, okay, good. The narrator, in fact, decides he will help Falk. He will help him to bid for this young lady's hand. So they go to Herman, and uh, what happens is the first time that Falk really opens his mouth is to make the announcement that uh, I have eaten man, that he has engaged in cannibalism. And why does he say this? Well, it's very odd. We don't know. But he pretends that it is something that has to be aired before he settles down with this young lady, that she must know this. And Herman flips out, her father flips out. He says, "Hey, you're crazy. This is beyond the pale. Off my ship, be gone with you." So they leave the ship, the narrator and Herman, excuse me, the narrator and Falk. And then they sit down, and Falk tells him the story of how he came to eat man, came to become a cannibal. And I'll leave it off there.
Okay. And you told me when we discussed this previously uh, that you found it to be much more humorous than anything you had read in Conrad before. You in our first two books, Lord Jim and Heart of Darkness, you detected no amount of humor, and that to you is a mark of a good book to have at least some kind of wry, ironic, sardonic, if not outright funny lines. What did you find here that was of a humorous nature?
The whole story, I think, is funny. From the outset, where we see this strange ship, the Diana, with the German family on it. He describes it as a little bourgeois household, and it's very incongruous in this rollicking Southeast Asian port. That's funny. Herman's funny. He's kind of a buffoon. Uh, Falk is very funny. I mean, the guy doesn't open his mouth until he then says, "I'm a cannibal." What's this all about? We'll go into it shortly, I presume, but that's a humorous setup. And there are also humorous scenes where, for example, um, after this incident with the tugboat, the narrator is sitting in this bar, and Falk shows up, and that interaction there, where how is our narrator going to deal with this guy who completely snubbed him and went back on his agreement with him and has showed himself to be something of a scoundrel? How is he going to deal with that? Well, it's kind of funny how he does deal with it. I don't have to go into it, but there are certain scenes too that are humorous.
Okay. And can you read any passage that to you seemed humorous? Any scenes? I had a couple marked. The problem is my edition doesn't have page numbers, So,
Well, I don't really have the humorous scenes marked. I have a couple, but not humorous ones. Why don't you just go ahead and read yours?
okay, I'll read one I picked up on right here. Um, I started to the office perfectly calm, calm with excessive rage. Evidently, they knew all about it already, and they treated me to a show of consternation. The manager, a soft footed, immensely obese man, breathing short, got up to meet me, while all around the room the young clerks, bending over the papers on their desks, cast upward glances in my direction. The fat man, without waiting for my complaint, wheezing heavily and in a tone as if he himself were incredulous, conveyed to me the news that Falk, Captain Falk, had absolutely declined to tow my ship, to have anything to do with my ship this day or any other day. Never.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah,
kind of,
it's just a humorous take, and it's funny for us because we've been coming from a Conrad who was deadly serious in Heart
yes,
of Darkness and Lord Jim. So anytime he even cracks a smile, as it were, in his prose, we're with him. It's like, oh, hey, good one, Joe. Hey, you're lightening up.
right,
Because
right.
that's not intensely funny, but I agree with you. It is for by Conrad standards, light humor.
Yeah, and to call the man a fat man and
Yeah, yeah,
breathing short, got up to meet me while all around the room the young clerks, bending over their papers on their desk, cast upward glances in my direction. It's kind of a
yeah.
lighthearted way to describe this scene where he's going to find out that the man will never, a little bit of hyperbole is thrown in there too. Never tow
Yeah,
a boat.
yeah, he's got an eye for the grotesque, and he shares it with us. That's
Yeah,
true.
yeah, that's just a one out of quite a few passages that have a funny, sardonic air to them.
Well, he makes a lot of fun of the Herman character, for one.
Do you have any descriptions of his use of humor for the Herman character?
Ooh, you're really going hard on the humor aspect. I didn't prepare myself for that, Tim. No, I wouldn't want to bore our listeners with me paging through the book, but suffice it to say, and we'll say this, it's the rare story of Joseph Conrad's that has a happy ending
Okay,
as
now you
well.
didn't tell us about the ending yet. You only got to the point
Yeah.
where Falk tells his tale of cannibalism to the narrator. And what happens after that? And how does the girl receive this news when
Well, we
she's
have to tell the tale of the cannibalism because for me, that's the meat of the story. Because we're back to
so
Conrad
so,
as
so to
I,
speak?
because we're back to the Conrad that I very much admire, where he puts his characters into a vital test. And how will they behave? Will they behave well or will they fail the test? We saw that in Lord Jim. We saw that in Heart of Darkness. We see that here. And the test is that Falk at some point, he's again a chief mate, just like Lord Jim was. He's a chief mate, and he goes out. He's a Scandinavian of some sort. We don't get the exact nationality. Uh, Conrad doesn't, or the narrator doesn't know himself. He says, "Oh, he could be a Dane, a Norwegian. I don't know, some Scandinavian." So some Scandinavian boat sets off with a bunch of lumber, pine and fir planks, and it heads off for parts known, unknown. I don't know. It's very unclear. It's as if they don't know where they're going, like they're just being sent off somewhere. But they head to the southern hemisphere and they have problems right away. And here's where I can read something, which is, I think, is great, where we get catastrophe layered on catastrophe to create the situation where we have the vital test of character. And this is the Conrad that I have come to admire. How he knows this world. He's not messing around with his prose, a la some of the passages in George Jim. He's just laying it on. He's giving it to us straight. And we're there. We're fearful. We're scared. Here it is. So here's the boat. It's out. It's just north of the Antarctic, somewhere around there. And he writes, Wellington was to be the first port. So Wellington, New Zealand. Wellington was to be the first port, I fancy. It doesn't matter, because in latitude 44 degrees south and somewhere halfway between Good Hope and New Zealand, the tail shaft broke and the propeller dropped off. They were steaming then with a fresh gale on the quarter and all their canvas set to help the engines, but by itself the sail power was not enough to keep way on her. When the propeller went, the ship broached to at once, and the masts got whipped overboard. So, disaster number two. The disadvantage of being dismasted consisted in this, that they had nothing to hoist flags on to make themselves visible at a distance. Catastrophe number three. Right? It goes on and on. She drove south. To begin with, there had been an appearance of organization, but soon the bonds of discipline became relaxed. A somber idleness succeeded. They looked with sullen eyes at the horizon. The gales increased. She lay in the trough, and the seas made a clean breach over her. One frightful night, when they expected their hulk to turn over with them every moment, a heavy sea broke on board, deluged the storerooms, and spoiled the best part of the remaining provisions. It seems the hatch had not been properly secured. This instance of neglect is characteristic of utter discouragement. So that's the seminal disaster. Their food stores have been severely damaged, and they're not going to be rescued very soon, if ever, and they have to eat. Well, it comes down to survival of the fittest, and eventually Falk proves to be the fittest. He kills the carpenter, I think, who is the next sort of sea wolf, blonde beast type on board. So he emerges victorious, Falk, and they consume the corpse of this carpenter. And then as they languish at sea and the food is disappearing with each consumed corpse, they have to kill another one. So that's basically Falk. He's shooting people and they're eating them. And this is his great sin, that he has, not that he has killed them, but that he's eaten them, right? It's kind of funny, but I because that's the way Conrad seems to present it, that it's the cannibalism which is the shocking part, not that you're purposely killing people, to not waiting for them to starve themselves. He makes it very clear that every shot, then they would emerge from their cabins to eat this man who had been shot, presumably by Falk, because he's the one with the gun. Because Conrad never says explicitly, but he implies very strongly. So it's not the killings that are condemned, it's the cannibalism. And this is what weighs on Falk's mind. Well, eventually, the relationship between Falk and Herman is repaired. It seems that this young lady, this niece of Herman, has been in love with Falk this entire time. Uh, okay, and they Herman grants Falk her hand in marriage. She is visibly thrilled, and they meet on the deck, and sun sets, roll credits, happy ending. Uh, yeah, that's
Can
it.
you read the ending to us? It has an
I can
intro.
read it. Yeah, it's straight out of an MGM Technicolor film.
Yeah, it does have a kind of a,
Those two met in sunshine abreast of the mainmast. So the niece and Falk. He held her hands and looked down at them, and she looked up at him with her candid and unseeing glance. It seemed to me they had come together as if attracted, drawn, and guided to each other by a mysterious influence. They were a complete couple. In her gray frock, palpitating with life, generous of form, Olympian and simple, she was indeed the siren to fascinate that dark navigator, this ruthless lover of the five senses. From afar, I seemed to feel the masculine strength with which he grasped those hands she had extended to him with a womanly swiftness. That's not the complete end, but that's essentially the end.
and I like the way it says in the final paragraph. Um, when I returned in command of another ship some 5 years afterward, Mr. and Mrs. Falk had left the place. I should not wonder if Schomburg's tongue had succeeded at last. Schomburg is the owner of the pub, right?
Yeah, he had spread all kinds of rumors about uh, the narrator also being a rival to Falk and how this was some sort of love triangle when it was never the case because the narrator was never interested in the niece.
And it says here, I should not wonder if Schomburg's tongue had succeeded at last in scaring Falk away for good. And indubitably, there was a tale still going about the town of a certain Falk, owner of a tug, who had won his wife at cards from the captain of an English ship. Now, that's based on a misunderstanding, right? It, it was supposed to be, according to Schomburg, the two came together, Falk and the narrator, to play a game of cards to win the woman's hand. But the real truth is there was no card game played. It was just Falk appealing to the narrator and the narrator helping Falk.
That was the humorous scene I was alluding to earlier that I didn't want to go into, where he
Okay.
comes in and he says, "Hey, can we go outside and have a talk?" And he starts dealing cards. He says, "Just pretend you're playing cards," because they're all looking out at him, looking out at the two of them, seeing what's going to happen. So they just played along, or at least the narrator does, with this idea that they're rivals, and but the whole time they're just talking and he's getting Falk's story, and they're straightening things out. Yeah, that's humorous, right? That's subtle humor on Conrad's
Schomburg
part.
is kind of a source of the humorous
They all are.
misunderstanding.
I mean,
Yeah.
especially down to the niece as well. I mean, she falls in love with this guy who's kind of a well, he's a manly man, that's for sure. He's a fine figure of a man. He's an alpha male. He exudes these masculine qualities. Okay, I can understand that to a degree, but then there's a next step of being bequeathed to him in marriage.
Well,
Can we at
apparently,
least can we at least exchange a few words first?
and apparently the cannibalism didn't bother her
No, maybe turned her on even. I don't know.
in a dark, grotesque way.
Sure. Like what a man. He's
Well,
willing to no, truly. No, not what a man, not that he did it, but he's willing to admit it. And he's willing just to say it right out. I ate human flesh. You got to know this, honey. And if it's going to torpedo our union, then so be it. I hope not.
well, and there was another part about it that it's kind of a Flying Dutchman tale. Even near the end of the book, we hear it said, why continue the story of that ship, that story before which, with its fresh water pumped like a spring of death, its man with the weapon, the sea ruled by iron necessity, its spectral band swayed by terror and hope, its mute and unhearing heaven, the fable of the Flying Dutchman, with its convention of crime and its sentimental retribution, fades like a graceful wreath, like a whip, like a wisp of white mist. What is there to say that every one of us cannot guess for himself? I believe Falk began by going through the ship, revolver in hand, to annex all the matches. Those starving wretches had plenty of matches. He had no mind to have the ship set on fire under his feet, either from hate or from despair. He lived in the open, camping on the bridge, commanding all the afterdeck and the only approach to the pump. He lived. Some of the others lived too, concealed, anxious, coming out one by one from their hiding places at the seductive sound of a shot. And he was not selfish. They shared, but only three of them all were alive when a whaler, returning from her cruising ground, nearly ran over the waterlogged hull of the Borgmester Doll, which it seems in the end had in some way sprung a leak in both her holds, but being loaded with deals could not sink. So there's an explicit mention of the Flying Dutchman, the
Yeah.
spectral ship where there's it's kind of a ghost ship with these ghastly figures coming out to consume human flesh. And I would also say,
Zombies,
what's that?
like zombies.
Kind of like zombies. And I would also relate it to the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, where he shoots the albatross, and as a penalty, everyone drops down and dies, and he survives with water, water everywhere, and not a drop to drink. Water, water everywhere, and all the boards did sink. You know, so there's so there's kind of it's kind of a ancient mariner Flying Dutchman tale on top of everything else.
Well done, Tim. And I would particularly come down on the side of the Flying Dutchman because, as you mentioned in a phone conversation, the Senta character
Oh,
of this niece who redeems him. And there's no two ways about it. Falk talks about how he has to change his life. He can't stand being alone anymore. He's going to do himself in. He's at the end of his rope. He needs someone, and this woman will be his salvation. And it turns out that way. And isn't that the end of the Flying Dutchman of
correct,
Wagner? Yeah.
correct.
So I would come down very strongly on the influence of the Flying Dutchman, particularly because of the explicit mention. I mean, there's probably no doubt that he was influenced by that Conrad.
Well, and I have to mention that in the original Flying Dutchman tale, it was written by what was the name of the great Jewish writer of Germany,
Hein,
1830?
Hein,
Heinrich
Heinrich
Heine.
Heine.
Heine. It
No,
was written
Heine, not Heine.
Heine. It was written by
Yeah.
Heinrich Heine, and I don't think he had the redeemer character of Senta in there. That's a very
Mhm.
Wagnerian thing to put the redeeming feminine, eternal feminine.
Right.
So when we talk about this as a Flying Dutchman tale, we have to talk about it particularly in the Wagnerian sense of the Flying Dutchman. So
Right.
I wonder if Conrad knew his Wagner.
I'm sure. I would bet my life on it. The parallel is too stark.
And he mentions it explicitly in the context of the
That's
book.
what I said, and that's what you said.
Yeah,
Yeah. So we're
yeah.
we're we're on the same page with this one. A uh, uh, definitely a great deal of Flying Dutchman resonance in this one. What I also liked about it though was, again, as I said before, it is part of uh, this Conradian universe that has taken shape, at least in my mind, if only through the readings that we've done thus far. Now, I don't know. Maybe it's not the case. Maybe these are all they all align just by happenstance. That all the rest of the stuff he wrote is not at all like these things. But I'm imagining that his world view boils down to basically this idea that uh, life is catastrophic, right? And that we all live in this certain kind of moral isolation from one another, as Lord Jim does, self-wrought in some ways, uh, as Kurtz does. He isolates himself completely from civilization, white civilization, and the problems that then sets up. And then, of course, Falk. I mean, he's struggling with his past, with this with the sin of his, with how to redeem it, with his utter loneliness. He can't even open his mouth to speak and communicate with people. And yes, so this idea that we all have we're living in our own little moral universe, isolated from those of others, and it probably won't end well, as Lord Jim doesn't end well, as Heart of Darkness does not end well. But here it ends well. So, this I'm imagining this is the exception to how he concludes most of his stories. I don't know, but it seems like an exception because most of these things, just based on those two premises, are moral isolation and the catastrophe that awaits. It seems as if things have to end badly in most instances. It's like he's like film noir between covers.
Well,
The slow slide into degradation and destruction. That seems how it works for him. Although I don't know that. I'm just conjecturing based on what I've read so far.
well, that's how it happens in Nigger of the Narcissus.
Right.
The black man ends up dying on the boat uh, due to neglect from the captain, who he finds out that this black man had been feigning sickness in order to get out of certain chores.
Hmm.
So he allows him to just flounder there without any kind of sustenance once he finds this out. And the black man dies, but it's somewhat redeemed by the fact that the characters on the boat seem to have a real affection for the guy who died. And when they go on shore in London off the Thames and they're in a pub, they're talking about him and they have fond memories of him. And the fond memory of the white seaman kind of redeems the death of the poor black guy. So in that sense, it doesn't end well either. Um, but there's a little bit of a redemptive element in the memories of those who came after.
Hmm.
And another thing I'd like to mention about Falk, which we encountered in Lord Jim and Heart of Darkness both, was the story within the story, the narrator telling the tale of another, of another time.
Well,
Um,
of course, here we have a story in a story in a story when we get the tale of the cannibalism.
oh yes, yes. So this is what's known in literature as a frame story, and this is a frame within a frame, which you
Yeah.
mentioned there in this case. Um, why do you think he chose to make this a frame narrative? And do you think it was effective in that way, or would it have been better just to tell it in the first person, as if you were there, rather than?
I think it's a nice little aspect of Conrad. He wants to embed all these stories that we've read so far in kind of a maritime setting, and he wants to conjure this image of maritime types sitting around with their pipes and their beer, and the fires dwindling in the grate, and the sun has gone down, and we're hunkering down for a crackling good yarn. It
Yeah,
sort of gives you an extra 5, 10, 20% of mood that you wouldn't otherwise have. And I like that mood. As I've said before, I'm big on adventure stories. I was teethed on adventure stories as a boy through our father, who would force feed me all these very advanced works like Moby Dick and 2 Years Before the Mast and the Leatherstocking Tales when I was just a callow boy of 8, 9, 10, 11, right? So I developed a taste for that kind of thing. And sure, my only objection is when is in Lord Jim, where the prose is so fancy and so polysyllabic that you can't imagine some guy just telling it that way.
And it's so long that you can't imagine it being told just in one evening.
Right. But, suspension of disbelief.
Disbelief.
Okay, so on balance, to get back to your question, I do like it. But it's probably not to be recommended for most writers.
You mean to you a tale within a tale?
Well, yeah, I mean, this guy was the real item, Conrad. He was a man of the sea. He knew wherever he spoke. He can set that up for us and we believe it.
I got
And,
you.
and if you're trying to do that in the modern era, for one thing, people don't sit around for hours listening to some guy tell a story. They're on Netflix or something or on YouTube. It wouldn't be believable. But pre-Netflix, pre-YouTube, back at the turn of the century, sure, that's your entertainment. Sit around, listen to a guy tell a true story with a little hyperbole,
Mhm.
but to make it, more dramatic, perhaps. But that was your entertainment. Going back to he alludes to this, I think, to the cave dwellers sitting around their campfire at night and listening to one of their number spin the yarn of his hunt that afternoon, going after the mastodon with his spear or whatever. And so it's very primordial, this sort of mood he sets. But why do it today? Oh, we sat around our suburban living room in Woodland Hills, and we were on our fifth martini, and then one of our parties started telling about doesn't work.
Yeah,
That's why I'm saying stay away from it, modern day writers. I don't think it can have the same kind of uh,
resonance.
atmospheric uh, effect that it has with Mr. Conrad.
Well, I was thinking that this tale of cannibalism is so compelling that it must have been that he heard that somewhere and decided to build this whole story around that one. It seemed to me that that must have come first, and then he wanted to find a way to contextualize that and give it a story,
Yeah,
a broader story. So he's going to get the beautiful female. You're going to get this cannibal guy trying to redeem his past, and she's the one who, in the end, does so for him. And then a narrator who's kind of caught up in it as a middleman. Um, I would imagine he came up with that cannibal tale somewhere, and he just wanted to find a good tale to put it within. That's the way I saw the story.
I think so. Uh, I'll have to read my Joseph Conrad biography, check on that, but it sounds reasonable what you conjecture. What is really daring, I think, though, is to put that within sort of a comic framework.
Oh yes.
And because it does come as a shock when we read that. It came as a shock for me that we're really descending into the depths, and it became a Jack London tale,
Mm-hmm.
life or death, kill or be killed.
Yeah,
So I think you're exactly right for that reason, because there seems to be a little bit of incongruity in how he embeds it. And it's probably because, yeah, he had that story. He said, "I got to use this," and
I gotta
he
use
did.
it.
He did it well enough. He did it well enough, and I found it to be an excellent story, not only for the cannibal tale, But all told, I thought it was well done.
Okay, so we're in about the last 10 minutes today. So I want to, we're only covering these three Conrad works, Lord Jim, Heart of Darkness, Falk, Reminiscence. So let me just ask you a general question about all three of them and about any other Conrad you may have heard about or read yourself. Um, I was reading up on some of the criticism and analysis of Heart of Darkness, and one of the authors there, I forget who it was, said that Conrad said his goal in writing all these sea tales is to do for the sailor what Millais did for the poor farmer in his Angelus painting, the famous Angelus
Wow.
painting, and the various views of poor farmers and how he dignified them through his portrayal of them. The French artist Millet, I forget his first name, Francois Millet, perhaps, I don't know.
Yeah, when you said that, I thought the Malay Peninsula. I was thinking, where are you?
Oh, Millet, there we
Malay,
go.
yeah,
Nice little symmetry there.
indeed.
Millet, Millet, the
Yeah,
painter. And he
yeah.
has the most famous one of the Angelus with the praying the Angelus with the plow between them, a man and woman
Hmm.
with the field, plowed field behind them and the sun setting in the distance, with the silhouette of a barn way in the background. So um, Conrad said his goal was to do for the sailor, the common seaman, what Millais had done for the common farmer. Do you think he's achieved that goal in these three stories or in other things you've read about him or other works of his?
Well, I think he has. And I have to say right now, as you're talking, I'm thinking here. Um, I have this copy. It's The Nigger of the Narcissus, Typhoon, and Other Stories. And Typhoon, I don't know if you've read that. That does it wonderfully. Because there's a captain. His name is Captain McWhirr. And to tell you the truth, thinking back on that, that has a happy ending too. Because McWhirr, he proves himself to be a man of real mettle, and he gets the ship through this typhoon, and that's the end. He survives it. That's a happy ending, just surviving. And he proves his bravery, his mettle, his resourcefulness, his nautical skill when tested, right? And he's at the beginning, he's just made out to be kind of this, schlubby bourgeois, almost land-lubbing captain. Like he hasn't really seen much serious action at sea, but then he does, and he comes through. And that's actually an interesting tale. I'd recommend it to people. But I read that in this little volume here together with Falk Reminiscence. And so that's an example of, oh yes, the common seaman is a heroic figure in many, well, in a couple at least, of Conrad's tales, his depictions.
I just read Typhoon as well recently. Did you read that just lately?
No,
Typhoon?
no, I'm talking about it from memory. No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Captain McWhirr, that's right. Um, okay, so he seems to have accomplished his goal of doing that from the few things we've read. Uh, he does the same. He dignifies the black man in Nigger of the Narcissus. Uh, he what other tales does he have that we haven't mentioned that are well, there's one called Nostromo. Have you ever heard of Nostromo?
I've heard of most of his titles, but like I say, the only ones I've read are the ones well, in this book and the three we've talked about in our podcasts.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we've kind of covered the waterfront, so to speak, to pun a phrase.
We've taken
Uh,
three of his works. We took a long work, Lord Jim. We took a medium. We took a novella, Heart of Darkness, and we took a short story, a long short story, Falk. And I'll only speak for myself in saying that apart from uh, the the deplorable uh, purple patches in his prose in Lord Jim, which is my only criticism of that novel. But it's a big one because, it's about the writing in large part.
Yeah.
But apart from that, I found all three even Lord Jim at the level of the issue he's grappling with and the atmosphere he evokes. And I found all three of these works superb. So, I got off on sort of the wrong foot with Lord Jim and Mr. Conrad. But like Lord Jim, he has redeemed himself in these two subsequent readings.
Do
Hats
you have
off.
do you have a favorite? If you had to rank them, one with your favorite or least favorite, or are they all kind of the same level to you?
No, 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 no. Well, Lord Jim's at the bottom because he slips up in the prose. But then, yeah, Falk and then Heart of Darkness. Heart of Darkness is masterful, as I said. It's a deserved masterpiece. It's deservedly ranked among the great masterpieces. And yeah, I hope people will uh, will read it or something else by Mr. Conrad. And if so, then we've done our job.
All right, my friend. Thank you very much. We're ending a little bit early here, um, 55 minutes, 56 minutes or so, but that's okay. We go as long as the material lets us. And I think
Yep.
we've reached the end of the line. We're in the we've gone down the Thames and we're in the London Tavern and we've reached the end of the line. So let's
Yeah.
stay there
All
and
right.
say our
Good one.
farewells.
All right.
All right, thanks,
Ahoy.
Kevin.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye bye now.